The main books as an editor is Infant Research and Psychoanalysis, authored by B.B. Linus Ruth et Trotnick et al. Rock Music and Psychoanalysis, authored by Lewis Aaron, Heather Ferguson, Joseph Ledoux et al. Neuroscience and Psychoanalysis in the third edition, authored by Alan Shaw, Van der Kolk et al. And the last book edited by Phrenis Zero Publications was in March 2023, Why War in Ukraine? Psychoanalysis, Trauma and Resiliency, authored by Vamit Volkin and Sver Varnin.
So
Giuseppe.
I am surprised because my paper wasn't originally destined to this panel, but because it was another panel, a more clinical one. But in my paper there is a vignette, a clinical vignette about the border between Israel and Palestine. So a clinical case borrowed to me by Henry Abramovich, an outstanding Israeli analyst. And this is an enactment by the organization to move me to this panel, and enactments are always useful to say this. So, borders are also, in a Winnicottian sense, also plays of transitional plays and plays of playing, maybe. According to Jeremy Safran, this paper is dedicated to Jeremy Safran and Lewis Aaron, two prematurely passed away, unfortunately. Although the number of empirical confirmation is constantly increasing, the debate which opposes those who believe it is better to conceptualize psychoanalysis as a natural science and those who prefer to consider it as a hermeneutical discipline will inevitably go home. The reason for this is in the fact that psychoanalysis is situated at the border of a lot of disciplines and different sciences. As Safran wrote, though problematic and source of confusion among different psychoanalytic approaches, this epistemological status of psychoanalysis, related to its condition of liminality, is a meaningful source of vitality for the discipline. The question of border and boundaries was at the core of a book I edited in 2009. The name itself of the publishing house I founded in 2007, Phrenis Zero, echoes the same meaning. The genesis of the neologism phrenis recalls the Greek word phrenes, which has the double semantic denotation of mind as well as diaphragm, thus referring to a mental that can be thought of on the basis of special metaphors, like that of border, boundary, and limit. So, enactment is to be, by me, studied, explored according to some viewpoints, some levels. The intrapsychic level as the first. The border can be used to denote the limits between internal and external world, psyche and soma, psychic apparatuses and provinces, etc. From an interpsychic point of view, border can be associated with the concept of intersubjectivity. And the third, to indicate the functioning that affects the entire analytic pair at work. The concepts of third topic by Kandra-Camier, of analytic field by Baranger and Baranger, as well as of analytic third by Ogden, refer to the same realm of the third. Even though, as Aaron wrote, it is often defined ambiguously and inconsistently across schools. For some, the third refers to something beyond the dyad, a context within which we emerge. For others, the third is an emergent property of a dyadic interaction, etc. But these are the co-created intersubjective enactments, according to Jessica Benjamin. Other authors consider the third as the extra clinical frame, the community inside the analyst, the patient interact, or the intraclinical frame, the setting, the analytic rule. This is not the intersubjective third, clearly. So at this level, we can place all the theories on borders of the analytic setting and on boundary violations that involve not only borders at the interpsychic level, but also those concerned in the following one's level. From an interdisciplinary point of view, inside psychoanalysis, the border serves to distinguish the various currents of contemporary psychoanalytic thought, both on the basis of crucial polarity on a more strictly theoretical level, dichotomies, trauma, fantasy, conflict, developmental block, empiricism, hermeneutics, and on the technical. From an interdisciplinary point of view, the border plays the role of a bridge between psychoanalysis and the other clinical adjoining disciplines, psychiatry, but also infant research, neuroscience. And I would add an intercultural point of view, where the border can be considered as a transitional concept allowing to enlighten cultural countertransference phenomena in transcultural clinical setting. Is the case of the clinical vignette. The clinical vignette, referring also to the transgenerational point of view, is the last one. Studies on the transmission of traumatic condition across several generations cannot disregard the fact that the borders between the generations are also places of links and largely unconscious narcissistic pacts. The vignette, I anticipate, concerns Israeli analyst interacting with a Palestinian patient, Muslim Palestinian patient, in the day of the memory in Israel. That is the day when, for 2 minutes, a siren sounds and block all people, all Israeli people, because I mean that Palestinian goes on working, but Israeli people stand in silence, and the analysts realize that seance, that session would be occur with the Palestinian patient during the siren, and so it's somewhat activating an enactment coming from their transgeneration past. So I skip on the etymology of enactment. The first word in order to illustrate the theme of action by Freud in the epilogue of Dora case is agieren, which was translated by Strachey as acting out. This is a question by, I have no time for explore this.
Excuse me, I just want to ask, the therapist was a Jew?
Yes, Israeli.
Israeli. And the patient
Palestinian.
was Palestinian. He knew that he is a Jew and he knew that he is a Palestinian. Yes?
Of course.
They both knew
Their identities.
Yeah.
their identity.
Yes.
And they both knew that they have 2 minutes to
Yes,
start.
but I have to illustrate further the clinical vignette. I have to. Yes, I have to, yes. So, Boleber says that about enactment, the standard normative agreement that enactment seems to infringe is the explicit contract between analyst and patient, which Freud recommended. In psychoanalysis, both of them are committed to remain at the symbolic and verbal level. Starting from the orthodoxical statement, contemporary psychoanalytic approaches discuss about the participation of the analyst, about the inevitability of enactment, and this is the reference to Immanuel Kant's concept of surrender, of the acceptability of enactment, about the responsibility for them and their predictability. Alongside with what happened for countertransference, for enactment, psychoanalysis moved from viewing it as a therapeutic error or sign of personal flaws in the analyst to an attitude of appreciation of it as not inevitable, as not only inevitable and pervasive, but also as a key tool to understand subtle instances of interlocking transference, countertransference dimensions operating outside the analyst's awareness. So I would skip to the features about enactment. I mean that the importance of an article, a paper published by Boleber and colleague in 2013 in the International Journal of Psychoanalysis, they remark a question, because if not, it's not remarked, one can ask, one can wonder, what is the difference between enactment and projective identification? Projective identification was a common concept in the history of psychoanalysis, Melanie Klein, Bion, etc. But they, Boleber and colleague, emphasize a key concept, that is the deviation on the part of the analyst from a normative representation of his role inside what therapeutic relationship should be. And this is, according to me, the key concept to differentiate the projective identification in the literature is very, very diffused and enactment. And so, thanks to an individual effort and the supervision, finally the analyst realized that the enactment can be seen as resulting from the collusion between the patient's transference fantasy and somewhat coming from his own counter-transference. So enactment is always co-created. And there are three borders, according to me, to be explored in the enactment: the interpsychic level, the intersubjective level, where is placed the third, the intersubjective third, according to Jessica Benjamin, where is the moral third, that is the analytic position of compassionate witnessing, in which the analyst takes entirely responsibility for all what happens in the space of thirdness. And this compassion is based on the strength of his acceptance of frailty. So it is somewhat very, very known, but I would emphasize it. And another important issue is the difference between enactment and boundary violations. And I would mention the important argument provided by Joyce Slackower when she says that there is a continuum where enactment and minor misdemeanors are at one pole and boundary violations are at the other pole. It is not a discrete definition, a border, a neat border about them, between them. According to Joyce Slackower, to complicate the distinction is the statement widely shared over the specific literature of the particularities of psychoanalytic boundaries and rules of engagement. To some degree, what constitutes a misdemeanor is personally and relationally defined. In some period of the history of psychoanalysis, is considered as an infringement of boundaries and professional rules. What is considered such infringement may be viewed as professionally correct in other cultural contexts. And recently, due to Winnicottian psychology and relational terms in psychoanalysis, the standard psychoanalytic ideal has loosened with time, and the notion of the analyst as a person has shifted our view of treatment relationship in a more personal, less formalized direction. So, in extreme synthesis, we have to take into account the gravity, the repetitivity, the harmful consequences for the patient and the therapy, and the therapist's long-lasting inability of auto-analyzing content transference. These are the four features that Glenn Gabbard mentioned to discriminate this two kind of phenomena. And
we've got 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, I skip very fast to the clinical vignette in order to stay in the border of time because so I anticipate what is day of mourning. On this day, people stop and stand in silent remembrance, and even those who are driving on highways stop and stand next to their cars. Says Abramovich, it is a moment when the power of the Israeli collective is most strongly felt. Some days before the Day of Memory, when the analysts realized that the Memorial Day siren would have been going off in the middle of the session of the Palestinian patient, confessing to be ashamed, first tried to reschedule the session to avoid facing his discomfort. However, he admits, we were unable to find an alternative time, and it did not seem right to cancel solely because of my discomfort. So what should I do? I faced a dilemma. And he adds, my anticipatory anxiety triggered cultural countertransference in the form that Jung called recollectivization, melting away of the individual in the collective, in which an individual is swallowed up in collective identity. In Israel, the experience of standing silently during a memorial siren on the Day of Remembrance is inherently recollectivizing. The entire nation symbolically becomes one, facing and in communion with those dead. But, however, it does not allow room for the Palestinians. In his cultural content transference, the analyst feared he and the analysand would no longer meet as a patient and healer, but as Palestinian and Israeli, as victim and victimizer. Says Abramovich, I was concerned that I would no longer be in his eyes a caring analyst, but one of them, an occupying oppressor, and worse, that I would see him not as one who suffers, but as one of them. In short, I feared that the analysis would not survive the collective encounter. And he continues, did I fear intense destructive projections that I would not be able to contain? Probably. Did I feel collective guilt at injustice done by my people toward these people? Certainly. When the session began, the analyst said that the siren would sound in the middle of it. He said to the patient that he would stand, and in that while the patient should do what he felt most comfortable doing. When the sign came, the analyst stood and the patient sat. His sitting, says Abramovich, my standing was a now intersubjective, now moment, of being separate and separated, misunderstood and misunderstanding, included and excluded, but anyhow together. And the analyst made remind an episode he lived with his supervisor in the same occasion when the siren sounded. The supervisor and the analyst. The supervisor was a survivor of Auschwitz, and they stood together. And so the enactment activated in the analyst with the Palestinian patient, activated this remembrance, this important remembrance. So also for the Palestinian patient and the Israeli analyst, one moment they were standing and sitting separately, each in their collective, and they were together once more, doing the work of analysis and memorializing. After the siren ending, the analyst asked him if he had wanted to speak about how he felt. And skipping and going to the conclusion, the patient said no. It's no clearly embodied anger, personal and collective. As he later agreed, it was expression of being too angry to speak of his hunger. But it was also a protest about the setting of the agenda. Says Abramovich, I had wanted to talk about how the intrusion of the collective made him feel, but he preferred to continue to discuss important personal issues he had been talking about when the siren sounded. He had had his own Nakba, the word Arab people define the collective catastrophe in 1948. Their very different experience of the memorial siren, of the therapist standing, the patient sitting close together, but the cultural apart, did help create a new kind of space outside victim-victimizer complex, and help, says Abramovich, experience what had happened in a new way. As a result, the patient showed, perhaps for the first time, a new ability to truly change somewhat significant in his outside interpersonal world, mourning the end of an important relationship, and says Abramovich, to symbolically move from Memorial Day to Independence Day. So the enactment of the memorial siren gave to the therapist a deeper insight into the patient's experience as a victim, both personally and collectively, and it resulted to be related for him to what he calls syntonic cultural content transfers. So my conclusion is simply giving my my admiration to Lewis Aron and Jeremy Safran, and with these words, by Lewis Aron, Gianni Nebbiosi and Susanna Federici I am very grateful to them for having invited in Rome Lewis. I don't know if it was the last conference he had.
In 2008.
Yes.
3 months after.
Yes, and he said that as psychoanalysis is somewhat messy, not smooth, therapist-patient relationship is an unpredictable dance, just like Pina Bausch's choreography. A dance in which negative emotions, efforts to repair, and a covert sexuality, says Theodore Jacobs, may have operated as an early signal system for affects that were approaching but had not yet reached consciousness. And the inevitability of enactment with the patient, rather than being considered only as a mark of the therapist's fallibility, if recognized, it is to be viewed as a sign of authenticity and potential creativity, what Aron called generative enactment. Generative enactment and research of authenticity These are the two of the most important legacies of these two outstanding psychoanalysts. Unfortunately, two prematurely passed away, Jeremy Safran and Lewis Aron. Very pleased to speak and to meet you.